This is the second of a number of themed events where we are working with industry to identify some of the technology barriers that we need to knock over to get towards the visions and how we want to work in the future and to support a digital transformation. We're working today, or yesterday and today, specifically around smart facilities. What you see here is the 6 themes that form the strategy of the Digital Transformation Solution Center. We see these are outcome-based, so the top 5 are outcome-based. So we're looking at transforming the supply chain and digitally enabling the supply chain. We're looking at using artificial intelligence and data science in the subsurface world, and we've had a call out similar to the call that Nikki mentioned. We're looking at using data science, and then we've chosen some winners, and we'll be investing a number of people, which we'll announce shortly. We have smart facilities at the event that we're running today. Next month, we're looking at the digitally enabled worker. So it's very important that we put the worker at the center and understand how the technology will transform the way they do their work. And it's critical that we capture what's in it for them. But there's the upskilling, there's the transformation from a job perspective. And if you look 5 or 10 years down the road, there's probably many jobs that we don't even know what they are. They're new, they'll be developed. So it's very important. When they also look at the production side, the more barrel side of the equation, flow insurance, well integrity, some of those other things where we look at using AI and machine learning again to really optimize our current system from that perspective. All of that is enabled by a digital and data architecture. So we talked a lot about data today. And there's also a huge security aspect to that as well. So that's really important. But what we're going to do, so what we do when we have these events, when we work with the workshop to identify some of the technology barriers, is we start with a vision. We start by painting a vision what the future could look like. There is no real right answer to this. So the vision is really just about getting a discussion going about what it is that we're working towards as an industry. So we're just going to show you a little film around smart facilities.
Onshore and offshore, on the surface and subsea. Digitally enhanced smart facilities now have the potential to revolutionize every part of our industry, delivering a step change in performance from exploration to production efficiency. Our vision sees existing facilities retrofitted with IoT-enabled sensors and intelligent control systems, and all new facilities designed with the latest smart technologies incorporated. So what will these smart facilities look like? How will they work? And what benefits will they offer? Interconnected sensors on all major plant and key pieces of equipment will be supported by closed-loop edge computing that will be used to automate systems transmitting data onshore only by exception, while multiple assets will be monitored and managed by engineers working in fully integrated control rooms onshore. Only essential maintenance work will need to be conducted offshore by smaller teams using a range of digital tools to improve visibility and operational insights for onshore teams. Introducing other transformative technologies, including augmented reality, robotics, and digital twins for key facilities, will help to accelerate this transition. Overseeing these automated smart facilities, a skilled workforce using advanced analytics will be able to manage everything operational from logistics to drilling, inspection to maintenance. Driven by data, these smart facilities will help us to improve process safety, enhance plant performance, reduce operational risk, and lower operating costs. By investing in automation and optimization, there are big rewards to be realized. A 75% reduction in unplanned shutdowns, a 50% cut in the duration of planned turnarounds, and a 10% extension to field life by 2025. So is this a vision worth pursuing? The conversation starts today. The future of smart facilities starts here, with you.
Yeah, so is that one? So I can't tell when I'm shouting or not. So I think that was a video to try and demonstrate and show what our vision, or one possible vision of the future for working with smart facilities in our industry is. I think it's quite important to realize we're not talking about platforms. It's any operational asset that is applied. And that was the start of the conversation. So you was the people in the workshop. It also includes you today. So we'd be very interested in your thoughts around what that vision is and what that means. But before I go into some of the outcomes of that workshop, I just want to take you through some of the ideas around that vision. So you saw some numbers there in terms of why we're doing it. So if you look at production efficiency, I think the OGA for 2016 was 73% production efficiency in the UK. And that's been coming up slowly from 2012, which I think was the low point. And actually, the new figures for 2017 are coming out really shortly. And from what I understand, I think it will actually just show that journey, that general increase or gentle increase, has continued, which is good news, obviously. But if we really want to transform our industry and really drive down operating costs, and we're going to have to make a step change in the way we do things, because I think we can make evolutionary changes only so far, but what we really need is a bit of a step change. So that's reflected in some of the how do we reduce those losses? They're coming from unplanned shutdowns and they're coming from planned shutdowns. Hence some of these targets. And what we see is that there's little pockets of excellence going on around the industry, both here in the North Sea and elsewhere. But if we consistently applied some of these technologies, we could probably meet these targets relatively easy. So never mind. But there are some barriers to that, which I'll get onto in a minute. Obviously, most of our assets are late life or even past the design life, and especially when we get into the small pools discussions, extending the life of some of our critical infrastructure is probably really quite important in terms of making that economic case. Even if we radically redesign how we're going to develop and operate small pools, we still need critical infrastructure that exists today to be extended. The key component of what we want from industry, so it is to look at other industries and learn from them. So we've heard a little bit about the nuclear and energy industry, which is obviously very close to us in terms of managing assets. But we also learn from the other industries, airlines, automotive, everything else. So that was a key aspect of what we want to do with smart facilities, and typically, maximize the benefit of digital technology for the right thing. Excuse me. From the right things. In other words, we don't want to optimize with digital technology the wrong processes, or we don't want to make bad decisions really quickly, for instance. So, there is a focus of appropriately using new technology. So this is the vision. So the film is much better because the slide is very flat and it's very difficult to explain what it is. But fundamentally, it's that, and I hope you got it from the film, most of our assets will be remotely controlled in the future. Where we do have people on the assets, they won't be managing the asset, they won't be running it, they won't be operating it, they'll be just there for maintenance, right? There's a difference, and obviously want to minimize the man. That doesn't mean everyone's out of a role, because we see it's very critical that those we're managing the assets from onshore remote control. There will be efficiencies there, but really important is about how we, as Phil was talking about, we capture that manage and merge the data that we're collecting with that human knowledge and human input as we train. So even if we want a fully automated future, it takes a while to train someone to get towards that. We have to train the algorithm. Algorithms, you don't just buy an AI and you plug it in and it immediately tells you what's going on. You know, they're kids, right? You know, when they first join in, they actually have to learn the same way as us. And who does that and who supports that? It's largely human input. So we'll go through a process of providing human input to improve algorithms, and eventually we might move to the sort of black box control loops. Fundamentally, you know, there's some technologies at the bottom that are really key. It's very similar, obviously, to what Nikki had on her slide. Data architecture, robotics, AI, the edge computing to bring everything together. Mobility, so the ability to capture and use, capture data points effectively and easily. The intelligent digital advisor, which is where we ultimately want to get to. So having an understanding, we have that AI giving you advice. And standardization, so even something as basic as an equipment catalog, if as an industry, if we have standard ways of describing things, then that would really be helpful. And again, Phil talked a little about that common currency. So that was so this has a lot of technologies on there. The vision itself is that idea of mostly remotely controlled, realizing not everyone starts in the same place. So if you're in the facility of the future, we design that way. Obviously, with some of our aging assets, it's a moving, you know, but you need to go on that, you know, we need to move everyone forward on that journey. And that was what the vision is. So that was the starting point for the discussion. What we're after is which are the critical aspects, which are the critical technologies that we need to focus on over the next 5 years to make that future a reality. So, you know, we can't wait. It won't just happen by itself. We need to start working on some critical aspects. So this is the sort of thing that we wanted help. So we gave them, you know, here's a bunch of technologies that can be developed over the next 3 or 4 years. It's probably not worth going much further forward than 3 or 4 years because technology changes so fast. But what are the really important aspects? So this doesn't tell us too much. It just shows that all these technologies are available. Which are the critical ones that we should focus on? Get consortiums of interested operators and companies together to try and tackle some of the problems. So that was what we're after. So the outcome will be a technology roadmap with some clear work on specific technologies. And we always recognize that there is some real barriers. So it's easy for us to talk about technology, and as we often, you know, we well know, technology is actually quite easy. The bigger challenge for introducing technology is getting it used and the uptake. And there's a number of reasons for that. So Phil talked about the need for leadership. So it's true. So this is fundamental to our, so we are senior leaders, this is fundamental to our industry, it's fundamental to our companies, and we need to change and we need to do things differently. And so we need that. We need the capability and the talent. We talked about other industries, Uber, Google, you know, their data and data science is essentially their core business. So that's the majority of their capabilities there. We're adding on this capability afterwards. Lack of adoption and expansion of industry data standards. I've talked about standards in terms of, you know, why don't we describe the same piece of equipment the same way in every company? That would help. But it's also the communication protocols and the other standards that are necessary for interfaces. Remaining facility lifetime, obviously it's very important. You know, in some cases, would you really invest in doing some of this stuff if you know the remaining lifetime is pretty short? But you may have critical risks. You may have something that you really, if you could manage your risk, you might extend the life. So it's understanding that balance. There's always going to be a balance between cost, value, and risk. It's really important to understand that. Opportunity around smart sensors, operational, and then at the bottom is probably a really key one. So operational, you know, culture and resistance to change. I think so. Lots of wry smiles. You know, I think everyone understands that. But actually, it's not just, you know, the culture has grown up over time. We are a risk-averse industry for very good reasons. But you know, if we want to get to a vision of being more automated, more driven with black box making decisions on our behalf, then we need to that requires a complete change in operational philosophy, generally speaking. So we need to look at that operational philosophy, figure out how we're going to bring everyone along on the journey, and that's that human input to those algorithms that we talked about on the data journey. So I'm going to talk, so that was the basis we decided, and then we went into a workshop. And the first question we asked them was, so what do you think? Rubbish vision? Good vision? Not ambitious enough? Need to be more aggressive? Nah, no chance. That's not going to happen. That's not ambitious. It's too ambitious. Let's do something else. And actually, the input was that it was just about right. Depending on who they were and their background, I think people drifted towards the not ambitious enough, which is interesting. No one thought it was too ambitious. So obviously there's a recognition that, as I mentioned before, everyone is starting at a different place. So it depends completely on your asset in terms of where you need to be and where you could probably get to. The recognition of that the vision, whatever it was, even if we agreed to it, probably would never happen, right? Or because it will be something different when you actually arrive there. And of course, you never arrive because you push the vision out even further. But the important thing is a vision, and you need to be on a journey towards it. There was a little bit of discussion around, are we still getting too much of the human in the picture? So we were still talking about some maintenance. Maybe you'd have maintenance. So in the facility of the future, we're talking a little bit about walk to work and having planned maintenance going around in specific way. You take all the people and all the materials to the asset, move it around, etc. So that was an interesting one, because coming back to that discussion we've had around the importance of human input to training algorithms to get to decision support, it's one that's up for discussion. It wasn't clear necessarily that we included subsea, but that's purely just because of graphics, essentially. As I said, so it's about any asset that you need to run and operate is in scope. That, as we've talked today, there's a lot of independency. So operating something is non-trivial, right? So we have messy data, as Phil was saying earlier. We have a whole host of functions that all need to work together in an integrated fashion. So a smart facility is going to have to bring all this together, and that really is quite challenging. So it's not just about the operation; it's also about your supply chain and how you deliver things, the logistics, and other aspects. And we should not underestimate the organizational culture change. So this is the input. So for the reasons we've talked about already. So that was good input. So where did the room see that the real opportunities were going to be enabled through taking this approach? One aspect is increased production, which is obviously, so remove downtime, you increase your production, but also it will set up your ability to do smart things in the production optimization space. As I say, we have another event focusing specifically on that, but that was a key aspect. With improved performance comes reduced OPEX, with removal of people from offshore, so you increase your safety performance or your exposure to risk, but also obviously decreases OPEX. If you're predicting maintenance and you're changing the way you maintain, so you're changing from scheduled maintenance periods to only maintaining when you need to, you're changing your inspection window. So why inspect when you know essentially that it's going to be fine? So if you're changing that, you're going to have a material impact on OPEX as well. So as I said, reduce planned shutdown, the optimization of the supply chain and logistics, and the opportunity to look at the demand side of supply chain logistics, which is obviously your integrated activity plan, generally speaking, from an operational perspective. And as I mentioned before, the optimization of inspection. So what we try to do is then coalesce the discussion around and focus on technologies into a number of themes. What we do with that then is in a few weeks we'll continue to work on this. I'll talk about these in a minute. we'll then go back to the industry, we'll go back to the workshop and say, actually in smart facilities, we work with the industry and these are the key areas that we need to focus on. And then there's a bit of a call for action for companies to get involved, to set up, discussion and identify projects that we can do together to move that particular theme forward. And in the supply chain, we've just done that, and we're developing ideas around planning and around track and trace of the supply chain, but also looking at standardization in terms of how it impacts procurement, and also vessel sharing. So those are the outputs from that. So here we identified communication and infrastructure. So I'll come back to the data in a minute. Communication and infrastructure, obviously really closely aligned with Nikki's call. But we're looking at some of the technology. Norwegian sector has fiber everywhere. We don't. There will be discussions whether we should be, but given the nature of our aging assets, maybe not. We have 4G, is that good enough? What other technologies are we have? LP-WAN, and so other technologies that we could use. We can learn from, you didn't really talk about the cattle, did you? But so Nagy was going to talk about an opportunity where they can track basically a calf from when it's born through tagging all the way through the supply chain, sounds horrible, to your dinner plate. And you can track, yeah. So don't eat that bit. But we really can't do that in our industry. I mean, there are people who are doing this, but we're not applying it consistently. So that was the opportunity for us. Remote operations and control was a key theme. So, it's a key part of the vision, and we really want to do more work on that. But what does that mean? We talked a bit about planning. Improved scheduling and planning is a really key aspect of that. Asset integrity, sensing, and smart control. Getting the reality of what the situation is on the ground and having that data set that then can be used for advising. When you come back to data is key, right? We've had Graham helping us with sort of the idea of how we can apply agile to the challenge that a lot of companies have. We've got all this data, how are we going to use it? We don't want to collect more data. Well, maybe you should if you don't understand your risks. Perhaps you need more data. But that's irrelevant. We need to be able to manage and use the data we got. We've had a number of approaches, so I understand that one. The bit that we haven't been able to share today is that we've had through the TLB, which is Technology Leadership Board, and they commissioned a report through ITF looking at how our maturity as an industry and how we use data to look at trips, downtime, unplanned downtime, bad actors in the topside space. What that tells us, and this report will be available by the end of May, what that tells us is we're pretty immature in that space. We think we're doing a good job. A lot of companies think we're doing a good job, but actually we're doing that visualization piece, which is, if you remember the Gartner slide, it was that top bit. So we're actually pretty good at visualizing what's in Pi, in our historians, but we're not so good at taking it to the next level, which is getting insights from that data and then driving some aspects around, predicting. So predicting maintenance, which is the next step, and doing the prognosis and everything else. So there's a great opportunity for there, and that was identified as another opportunity. Cybersecurity as part of the architecture was another theme that came out very importantly. And one interesting one was that digital twin idea. So everyone thinks of digital twin as sort of from a monitoring perspective, of monitoring a piece, which is some component of a sort of a turbine blade or something as part of a turbine, and then maybe your asset or a whole fleet of turbines. But there's also the digital asset as it is reflected in your process, so your processes. And then what we were saying, well, what about the economics, the cost, the materials aspect? So to really have a digital twin, it needs to reflect not just what the pieces of equipment are, your 3D model, but the cost, the material, and the processes by which you're operating that. So then once you have data in that space, then there's an opportunity to use that to do real scenario planning. And one of the benefits of that is you prove the business cases of doing something with some of the technology, which was a challenge in terms of the adoption perspective. So that was a really interesting discussion. And that, if you have a data set like that, then you get into a place when you can drive the AI component. So you have a data set that reflects the operation more accurately. So it's not just condition-based monitoring a piece of equipment. You're beginning to get that overall knowledge and data set that then you can work with the human knowledge to develop the AI we want. So that might be, and I'm predicting that might be something that is a bit that far out there type projects that we want to work when we'll be really interested in getting something going in there. So we will hopefully end up with a number of projects that are focused on fixing some of the problems we see today, starting us off on the journey, and then ones that will be really transformative in terms of outcomes.